Hello and welcome to Mad Micro RC Mod's very first Patreon builds video. My name is Adam, I'll be your host, and I hope you find this Patreon channel to be a valuable resource if you're into micro RC of any kind. If you're one of the very first 25 subscribers to this channel, you automatically go into the draw to win this modified cocaine car. In this build video, we'll be taking a stock standard 158/164 scale cocaine car. This is about how fast they go stock, but we're going to take out the stock standard motor and we're going to replace it with a slightly oversized motor that fits back inside the car though, with a couple of little mods. Basically it's a straight fit as far as barrel size goes, it's just the length that you have to deal with. But after you do the modification, you'll find on your first drive that it was definitely well worth the effort. After all, it is probably one of the easier modifications I've ever done, with the most outstanding result on a standard battery with a standard controller. Also, the first two patrons that want to do this mod and ask, I'll send them a free motor. Okay, let's get started. First thing you need to do is undo the two retaining screws underneath the car and put them aside because they are longer than all the other screws in the car. Best to keep them separate. Then you want to pop the lid off the car. It shouldn't be a problem, it should normally just completely be loose after that. And then you want to have a look at the component that you're going to remove and the wires running to it, and just see if the wires are fouled up anywhere. Get some tweezers and just sort of pull them out a little bit so you've got a bit of room to get in with the cutters. I'm going to chop these in a minute. You can use side cutters to cut these, or you can just use like some toenail clippers, anything you want pretty much that'll cut it. Small scissors, anything. Then you want to bend the wires out a little bit so you've got access for stripping, tinning and resoldering. The next thing you want to do is get a small screwdriver and remove the gearbox retaining screw. Now, it's supposed to magnetize your screwdriver before you do this so the screw comes out. If you didn't, then use some small tweezers to remove the screw. If you want to magnetize your screwdriver, just rub it on the back of a speaker or a neodymium magnet. Now, getting the gearbox cover off, just pop one of the plastic clips at the back. Either one will do. You don't have to bend it or break it. Just pop it off, basically. And because the screw's not in the front, basically it should just pop open like that. Now, next thing to do is remove your internal gearbox components, which is the rear axle kit and also the compound gear and shaft. This is just so that if you turn the car around or flip it upside down while you're working on it, these parts don't fall on the floor. Okay, the next thing you want to do is get the motor out of there. You can easily do this with a flat screwdriver. I tend to use my tweezers for everything, so just lever it off the end and push on it. They're not actually in very tight and they're retained by a bit of plastic when you screw the gearbox retainer down, which we're going to remove anyway. So take the pinion off the motor. They're easy to get on and off, they're just a pull on, push on fit, and throw the motor away or take it apart and have a look inside if you're curious. Now this is the motor will be fitting. It's 2mm longer, doesn't seem like much, but the results speak for themselves. Now we need to take a little piece out of here. This is basically the mod you have to do mainly. This is the thing that stops the motor from sliding back out, and we have to cut it away so that that extra 2mm can poke through that spot. Now my knife is extremely blunt and been sharpened twice already, so I'm not going to cut into it, even though it's fairly malleable plastic. But that being said, it means if you've got sharp little cutters or something like that, you can easily just chop it out. If you take too much, it's not going to be a problem. If anything, it's going to be a little bit lighter. And that's never a bad thing, so just hack that piece out, and after you've removed it, then maybe use the hobby knife to just clean off any burrs that might have come from the cutting process, or any bits of dags like that left behind. Never ever cut towards yourself like this. If you get caught on plastic and the knife comes free, it will slice right through your finger in a heartbeat. Anyway, stripping the wires. Now you've got to strip the wires for tinning. I find that by just gently pushing it onto a blade in two places is enough, or if you can, you roll the wire on the blade very gently with finger pressure. And yeah, just grab your nails in there really tight and strip the sheathing off. Some wire you can actually just strip the sheathing without even pre-cutting it or whatever. I found it's easier to put a twist in the wire end by rolling the sheathing side and pinching the wire side. You'll need to do the same to both, obviously. And for tinning, you just need to get soldering iron and basically overload the iron with a little bit of lead and heat up the wire so that the flux does its job and the lead starts to stick. I normally swipe a little bit to try and leave a bit of extra lead behind. Depends on the kind of connections I'm doing at the time. This one I just did a end-to-end connection, a pretty rough one at that. Now, most motors will come pre-tinned, but I always like to go over and just put a little bit more on them for an easy, quick connection. And sometimes they're pre-tinned with a silver-based solder. So if you're using a lead-based solder, it's always good to just go back over it with the lead before you do solder them together. Now, the fun part. If you're going to solder wires together like this, you would in most cases put some heat shrink on right now as an insulant to slide back over the connection afterwards. I don't have any heat shrink this fine, but I'll show you what to do after this for re-insulation. Just use tape basically, and that's it. That's just a really dodgy end-to-end connection. As long as the lead's there, it's good enough. And there's the tape I was talking about. I normally just use this kind of tape pretty much for everything, even when I build micro RCs. It just seems to be a little bit more durable and flexible. And all you really need to do, this is a low voltage system. I mean, it runs 1.2 volts. Very little amperage in there. You just need to get it like one or two coatings of tape on there, and you'll never have a problem. One would be enough, but two just makes it a lot easier. Just wrap it around there. I mean, making it look so easy, it takes so damn long to do. But tape's good enough for this sort of thing. Not necessarily if it's a lithium job, but for this sort of thing, yeah, not a drama. Now, I always do a quick test of all electrical connection work and that before I reassemble a vehicle. So it's just a quick test. Okay, you'll have to pretend that the motor wires are soldered together, but this is how you put the motor and the gearbox back together. You pretty much just push the motor all the way home. It stops up against the shoulder of the motor anyway, it finds its own position, and reverse to how you took it apart. Put your compound gear and shaft back in, make sure that you don't have any hair or fluff in there. Put your rear axle back in, and if it looks right, everything's in place, then just pop the lid back over the top very gently and try and just drop it back on like that and just push down gently. It pays to sort of rotate the wheels at this point when you're closing it, just so the gears line up a little bit better as you're shutting it, and make sure that you haven't got any binding in the gearbox. And if you find that it's fine, put the retaining screw back in. Always go backwards with these plastics until you hear a click or feel the thread start, and then go forwards. That way you can take the screws in and out multiple times without damage. And then check again, make sure there's no binding in that. At this point you normally just turn it on and fire it up, but yeah, a bit of an editing error here, which happened because I lost some footage, or deleted footage I didn't think I needed until about now. So yeah, that's it. That's your gearbox back in. Now I found it's best to just get something on the little, I don't know, end cap crimps or whatever they call them, and just reposition the motor's angle so the leads are as far away from the wheel as possible. And if it's, you know, as it should be with the wires connected, you also bend them up a little bit and sort of tuck them in, or put some tape over the top just to retain those wires back onto the board. Now, because this is someone's prize for the 2,500 subscriber draw, I'm basically just gluing it in with super glue. It will be permanent and forever that way, unless someone really wants to get it out. And then just drop the body kit back on. The car pretty much from there is finished. Put this two screws in, give it a drive, give it a charge, and that's it, away you go. It's a lot of fun from there. So that's pretty much it. If you want to see how to finish the car, just watch me put two screws in really quickly with the rear cowlick, and that's it. This car is the prize, as mentioned before, for the 2,500 subscriber draw on YouTube. If you'd like to have a click on the link on this Patreon site and go there and enter, by all means do so. I hope you've enjoyed this first, hopefully of a few or many. Patreon builds that I'll be doing. And I hope you look out for my videos on YouTube and give comments, ideas, and you subscribe to Patreon. And if you're keen at one of them, subscribe, learn a bit about how to have a go at it, ask questions if you need to, I will answer them, and have a go yourself. It's much more fun having a go yourself after watching this stuff than just watching it, honestly. Anyway, thanks for watching my first Patreon video in full, and I hope to see you next time. This is Adam from Mad Micro RC Mods, out.